Take the old photo albums, Mom. We'll handle the real estate. That's what my son Michael said to me at the lawyer's office, barely glancing up from his phone as Mr. Patterson finished reading my late husband Robert's will. Michael's wife Jennifer sat beside him, already scrolling through house listings on her tablet. I sat there in that sterile conference room in Portland, Maine, my hands folded in my lap, staring at the mahogany table. The house, our beautiful 1,920 seconds colonial that Robert and I had restored board by board, was going to Michael. $800,000, the appraisal said. And me? I got the photo albums, the old furniture, Robert's collection of history books that filled an entire room. The house needs work anyway, Jennifer muttered, though I noticed she was already calculating square footage on her screen. We can flip it or rent it out. Good investment. My throat tightened, but I just nodded. What else could I do? Mr. Patterson cleared his throat awkwardly. Mrs. Brennan, there's also the matter of your husband's personal effects. The books, his desk, some boxes from his study. She can take whatever she wants from that stuff, Michael interrupted, standing up and buttoning his suit jacket. He was a real estate agent, my son, had been for 15 years. Everything was square footage and market value to him now. Mom, we'll help you move next weekend, okay? There's a nice assisted living place in South Portland. Jennifer found one with activities. I don't need assisted living, Michael. I'm 68, not 90. Mom, he sighed, that particular sigh children use when they think their parents are being difficult. Be realistic. You can't maintain a 4-bedroom house alone. The heating bills, the yard work, the repairs. Your father and I managed just fine. Dad's gone now. His voice softened, but only slightly. Look, we're trying to help. Take the albums, the books, whatever furniture you want for a smaller place. We'll handle selling the house. It's for the best. For the best. I heard that phrase a lot in the following weeks. Let me tell you about Michael. He was our miracle baby, born when I was 35 and Robert was 40. We'd tried for years, spent thousands on treatments, and had almost given up hope. When Michael finally came, we were so grateful, so overwhelmed with love that we gave him everything. Private school? Of course. Summer camps in the mountains? Absolutely. College at Boston University? We took out loans, sold Robert's vintage car collection, cashed in savings bonds. When Michael graduated and wanted to start his real estate career, Robert gave him the down payment for his first house. $50,000 we'd been saving for our own retirement. He's building his future, Robert always said when I worried about money. That's what parents do. But somewhere along the way, Michael stopped seeing the sacrifices. He saw the house, the furniture, the stuff, and started calculating their market value. When he got engaged to Jennifer 3 years ago, they didn't ask for our blessing, they asked for $20,000 for the wedding. Robert wrote the check without hesitation. I should have seen the pattern. I should have said something. But Robert just smiled his gentle smile and said, "He's our only child, Eleanor. What else are we going to spend it on?" My husband died suddenly last April. Heart attack while gardening, doing the thing he loved most besides me. He was 75. We'd been married 43 years. Michael came to the funeral, of course, stood by my side, shook hands with neighbors, accepted casseroles, but 2 days later, he was asking about life insurance policies. A week after that, about the deed to the house. A month later, about Robert's bank accounts. "I'm just trying to help you get organized, Mom," he said when I hesitated to share information. "Estate stuff is complicated. I deal with this all the time in real estate." So I gave him access to everything, because he was my son, and I trusted him, and because I was drowning in grief and couldn't think straight. The will reading was 3 months after Robert's death. Mr. Patterson, who'd been our lawyer for 20 years, gave me an odd look when he handed me the envelope labeled "Personal Effects," but he said nothing, and I didn't ask. By the following Saturday, I was packing up my life into boxes. Michael and Jennifer showed up at 9 in the morning with a U-Haul trailer and a list. They'd already hired an estate sale company for the good furniture. The crystal, the china, the antique sideboard, all tagged with little orange stickers. "You don't need this stuff in an apartment, Mom," Jennifer said cheerfully, wrapping our wedding china in newspaper. "And these pieces could get you some nice extra cash." I wanted to tell her that the china wasn't about cash, that Robert and I ate on those plates every Sunday for 40 years, that the sideboard was his grandmother's, brought over from Ireland in 1920, but my voice wouldn't work right, so I just kept packing photo albums into banker's boxes. There were 12 albums total. Brown leather ones from the 70s, those magnetic page albums from the 80s, newer scrapbooks from the 90s and 2000s. Our whole life together, documented in thousands of pictures. Michael as a baby, as a toddler, graduating high school, his wedding. And earlier photos too, Robert's childhood in Ireland. My own parents, our wedding day. "You sure you want all these albums?" Michael asked, carrying a box to my car. "They're heavy. Maybe just keep your favorites?" "I'm keeping all of them," he shrugged. "Your call. Oh, hey, did you find that insurance policy for Dad's car? I want to make sure we transferred everything." Always about documents, about money. Never, "How are you doing, Mom?" Or, "This must be so hard." I moved into a one-bedroom apartment in the Old Port District, 4th floor walk-up, but I didn't mind. It had good light, hardwood floors, and a view of Casco Bay from the living room window. I could walk to the Eastern Promenade, to the bookstore, to the coffee shop where Robert and I used to have Sunday breakfast. The first 2 weeks were the hardest. Unpacking boxes in that small space, everything I owned fitting into 600 square feet. The photo albums sat stacked in the corner because I couldn't bear to look at them yet. Michael called twice. Both times about paperwork. "Hey, Mom, did Dad have any safety deposit boxes you didn't mention? I'm just trying to make sure we got everything squared away." "What happened to that old desk in the study? The one with all the drawers? Estate sale people couldn't find it. Did Dad have any investments we don't know about? Stocks or bonds or anything? Never how's the new apartment? Or do you need help unpacking?" I thought about that a lot during those first lonely weeks. How we raise our children and how they turn out. Had we spoiled him? Yes. Had we taught him that love was measured in dollars? Maybe. Robert used to say, "Actions speak louder than words." And then he'd write another check for Michael without question. I made new routines. Morning walks on the promenade. Tuesday afternoon book club at the library. Thursday volunteering at the Portland Museum of Art, where Robert had been a member for 30 years. The staff there remembered him, asked about him, and I could talk about my husband without crying. But the apartment felt empty, too quiet, too small. One Thursday in late September, I was dusting the bookshelf when I knocked over one of the photo albums. It fell open, and something fluttered out, a loose photograph I'd never seen before. Robert as a young man, maybe 25, standing in front of a philatelic society building in Dublin. On the back, in his handwriting, "First stamp show, 1972. Caught the bug. Stamp collecting. I'd forgotten about that. When Robert and I first met at a teachers' conference in Boston, he'd mentioned collecting stamps as a boy in Ireland, but I'd never seen him with stamps during our marriage. He had his garden, his history books, his quiet hobbies. I assumed the stamp collecting was just a childhood phase, but now I was curious. I pulled down the oldest album, the brown leather one from our early marriage, flipped through pages of us in our 20s, skinny and laughing, camping in Acadia, and there, tucked between 2 pages, I found a small glassine envelope. Inside was a stamp, old, cream-colored, with an elaborate Irish design. On the envelope, in Robert's neat handwriting, 1922 Irish Free State. Rare. Keep safe. My heart started beating faster. I grabbed another album. Found another glassine envelope, this time with 3 stamps. 1,840 penny black. Victorian era. Valuable. Album after album. I searched. They were everywhere. Tucked between pages, slipped into photo corners, hidden in the spine pockets. Robert had mounted our memories on those pages, but between the memories, he'd hidden his stamps. Some envelopes had notes, some had just dates, all had stamps, dozens, maybe hundreds of them. My hands were shaking. I didn't know anything about stamps, but the way Robert had hidden them, the careful notes, this wasn't a hobby, this was a collection. I spent the next 4 hours going through every album, removing every glassine envelope, laying them out on the coffee table. By the time I finished, My living room floor was covered with tiny squares of paper, some barely bigger than my thumbnail, some as large as postcards. Stamps from Ireland, England, the United States, countries that didn't exist anymore. And then I found his diary. It was in the last album, the one from the past 5 years. A small leather notebook, the pages soft with age, tucked into the back pocket of the album cover. My throat tightened as I recognized Robert's handwriting on the first page. For Eleanor, when you're ready to find this, I always told you our real treasure wasn't in the bank. I meant it, love. I couldn't breathe. The diary wasn't long, maybe 30 pages, but every page detailed his collection. When he bought each stamp, where from, what he paid, what it was worth. Robert had been collecting for 50 years, since he was a teenager in Dublin. Small purchases at first, $10 or $20. But over the decades, as he learned more, as his eye got better, he'd acquired serious pieces. Spent 50 years building this collection, he wrote on one page. Never told Michael because he'd want to sell it, cash it in, put it toward something practical. But Eleanor, you understand. You kept every photo, every ticket stub, every postcard. You understand that value isn't just money, it's memory, history, beauty. The last entry was dated 2 weeks before he died. Michael called today, asking for money again. Jennifer wants a new car. I said no for the first time in his life. He was angry, told me I was sitting on assets while they struggled. Eleanor and I aren't sitting on anything, we earned everything we have. I'm tired, love. Tired of being seen as a bank account. When I'm gone, you'll find this diary. You'll find the stamps. They're worth more than the house, more than anything Michael thinks he's inheriting, but you'll know what to do with them. You always do. I sat on the floor of my apartment, Robert's diary in my hands, and cried until I couldn't anymore. The next morning, I called the Portland Philatelic Society. Explained that I had some old stamps, wasn't sure what they were worth, wondered if someone could look at them. They sent over a gentleman named Harold, must have been 80 years old, who arrived with a magnifying glass and a catalog the size of a phone book. He spent 3 hours examining Robert's collection, occasionally gasping or muttering under his breath. Finally, he sat back and looked at me over his spectacles. Mrs. Brennan, your husband had an extraordinary eye. These aren't just stamps, this is a curated collection of Irish and early British philately. The penny blacks alone are worth over 100,000. That Irish Free State block? Museum quality. Easily 300,000 at auction. The room spun slightly. 300,000? For stamps? For those stamps, yes. And that's just the pieces I recognize. You'd need a professional appraisal, but if I had to give you a rough estimate, he adjusted his glasses. I'd say you're looking at somewhere between $2 and $2.5 million. I couldn't speak. There's a major auction house in Boston, Harold continued gently. They handle collections like this. I can give you their contact information, if you'd like. $2.5 million, hidden in photo albums. While Michael got an $800,000 house and thought he'd won, I thought about what Robert wrote, about being tired of being seen as a bank account, about knowing I'd understand. And I did understand. Robert had spent 50 years building something beautiful, something meaningful, not to show off, not to sell, but because he loved it. The history in those tiny squares of paper, the craftsmanship, the stories. He'd hidden it because Michael would have seen dollar signs and demanded he sell it. But Robert left it to me because he knew I'd appreciate it for what it was. A lifetime of careful, patient collecting. A treasure built one small piece at a time. I called the auction house in Boston that afternoon, arranged for them to pick up the collection, appraise it properly, and prepare it for their spring auction. The process would take months, they said. Authentication, cataloging, expert verification. But they were confident that Harold's estimate was conservative. Collections like this rarely come to market, the specialist told me on the phone. Your husband was quite knowledgeable. These are investment-grade pieces. In November, Michael sold the house, got $820,000 for it. He called to tell me the good news. Market's hot right now, Mom. We did well. Jennifer and I are using some of it to renovate our kitchen. Oh, and we're finally getting that new SUV. You need anything? We can spot you a few thousand if money's tight. I'm fine, Michael. You sure? Because that apartment, I mean, it's pretty small. If you need help with rent or anything, I said I'm fine. There was a pause. Okay. Well, call if you need anything. He didn't ask about me, about whether I was lonely, whether I was adjusting, whether I missed my home of 40 years, just whether I needed money. The auction was in March, almost a year after Robert died. I didn't attend, couldn't bear to watch people bid on pieces of my husband's heart. But the auction house kept me updated by phone as lots sold. The Penny Black collection just went for $130,000. The Irish Free State block sold to a museum in Dublin for $390,000. Mrs. Brennan, the final total is $2.4 million, less our commission. We'll have a check for you next week. $2.4 million. From photo albums. I sat in my apartment that evening, looking out at Casco Bay, and thought about what to do. Michael had his house money. Jennifer had her new kitchen and her SUV. They'd call it our inheritance, what Dad left us, even though Robert left them the house and me the albums. They'd think they won. And I'd let them think it. I didn't need $2.4 million. What would I do with it? I was 68 years old, living comfortably on my teacher's pension and Social Security. The apartment was paid for. I had my routines, my book club, my volunteer work. But Robert had spent 50 years building this collection. It meant something. It should continue to mean something. I donated $500,000 to the Portland Museum of Art, in Robert's name, to establish a philatelic wing. They'd display historical stamps, host exhibitions, teach children about history through these tiny windows into the past. There'd be a plaque, the Robert Brennan Collection, given with love by his wife Eleanor. Another $500,000 went to the Portland Philatelic Society to fund scholarships for young collectors. Harold cried when I told him. $200,000 went to establish a scholarship fund at Boston University, where Michael went to school. For students studying history or library science, I specified who showed genuine passion, not just career ambition. I kept $300,000 for myself, used $50,000 to buy a small cottage in Cape Elizabeth with a garden and a view of the Atlantic. Spent another $20,000 on a trip to Ireland to visit the places Robert grew up, to see where his love of stamps began. The rest went into safe investments, enough to live comfortably, to travel when I wanted, to buy books and coffee and donate to causes I believed in. And I gave away the remaining $800,000 to local charities, food banks, homeless shelters, literacy programs, the kind of work Robert and I always supported but could never afford to fund properly. In April, the Portland Press-Herald ran a feature article. Local teacher's husband leaves $2.4 million stamp collection to museum and charities. Widow continues his legacy of education and community support. They included a photo of me at the museum unveiling, standing next to the plaque with Harold and the museum director. Michael called 3 hours after the article published online. Mom? Mom? Is this real? Dad had stamp collection worth $2 million? I was replanting the window boxes at my cottage. Soil under my fingernails, spring sun on my face. Yes, Michael. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't Dad tell me? That's more than the house. That's why didn't I know? You got the house, sweetheart. I got the photo albums. Remember? But that's you just gave it away? To museums and charities? Mom, that was inheritance. That was family money. We should've. Should've what, Michael? Sold it? Put it in a portfolio? Renovated another kitchen? Silence on the line. Your father spent 50 years building that collection, I said quietly, sitting back on my heels in the garden dirt. Not as an investment, not as a nest egg. Because he loved it. Because every stamp told a story, held a piece of history. He left it to me because he knew I'd understand that. But $2 million, Mom, is being used exactly how your father would have wanted, to educate, to preserve history, to help people who need it. I can't believe this. I can't believe you didn't tell me, didn't give us a chance to. To what? Talk me out of it? Calculate your share? Another silence. A long one. That's not fair, Michael said finally, but his voice was small. You know what wasn't fair? I kept my voice steady, calm. You asking about insurance policies at your father's funeral, calling only when you needed documents, never once asking if I was lonely, if I was scared, if I needed help unpacking boxes in an apartment a tenth the size of the home I'd lived in for 40 years. Never once visiting just to visit. I was busy, we were trying to help. You were trying to inventory assets. There's a difference. I heard Jennifer's voice in the background, sharp and insistent. Michael covered the phone, muffled, arguing. Then, Jennifer says you should have at least told us that it's not fair to surprise us like this. I'm 68 years old, Michael. I don't owe you or Jennifer an accounting of what I do with my own inheritance. Your father left you the house. You sold it, bought what you wanted, lived your life. I took the photo albums. I found what was hidden inside. I'm using it how I see fit. But I'm happy, sweetheart. For the first time since your father died, I'm actually happy. I have my cottage. I have my garden. I have purpose. Giving away this money to causes that matter. I sleep well at night. And you don't think we deserve any of it? After everything. After everything what? After all the money we gave you? The college tuition? The house down payment? The wedding? After all the times your father said yes when he should have said no? Michael made a strangled sound. I love you, I said, and I meant it. You're my son. But you were so focused on what your father left you that you never stopped to wonder what he left for you. The house was just a house. The stamps were a legacy. And you would have sold them without a second thought. That's not I wouldn't have, but we both knew he would have. I need to go, Michael. I'm planting petunias, and the soil's perfect today. Mom, wait. Goodbye, sweetheart. You know where to find me if you want to visit. Actually visit, not just call about paperwork. I hung up. He didn't call back that day. Or the next week. But 3 weeks later, on a Sunday morning, I heard a car pull up to the cottage. I was in the garden, wearing Robert's old gardening hat, my hands deep in the soil planting tomatoes. Captain, the golden retriever I'd adopted from the shelter last month, was sprawled in the sun nearby. Michael got out of his car alone. No, Jennifer. He stood at the garden gate for a long moment, just watching me work. Nice place, he said finally. Thank you. Garden looks good. Your father taught me well. He came through the gate, sat down on the bench Robert had built 30 years ago, the one piece of furniture I'd insisted on taking from the house. Captain immediately went to investigate, tail wagging. You got a dog. I got lonely. Captain keeps me company. Michael scratched the dog's ears, and for a minute, he looked like the boy he used to be. Before the real estate career, before Jennifer, before everything became about market value and square footage. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I kept planting tomatoes, giving him space to talk. Jennifer and I. We've been fighting. About money, mostly. About the house sale. About spending. About everything. She wants more. Always more. Bigger house, better car, fancier vacations. And I realized I sound just like her when I talk to you. You do. He winced. Dad used to tell me that money can't buy happiness. I always thought that was something broke people say to feel better. But you're actually happy, aren't you? Even though you gave away millions. Especially because I gave away millions. Your father built something beautiful, Michael. I got to honor that, share it, make it meaningful. That's worth more than keeping it in a bank. Jennifer doesn't understand that. Do you? He was quiet for a long time, watching Captain chase a butterfly. I'm starting to. I patted the dirt around a tomato plant, moved to the next spot. You know what your father wrote in his diary? He said he was tired of being seen as a bank account, tired of being valued for what he could give, not who he was. Michael's eyes were wet. I did that, didn't I? I saw him as money. I saw you as someone who'd always say, yes. Always help. Always give. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I sat back on my heels, looked at my son, really looked at him. 40 years old, successful on paper, empty inside, chasing numbers instead of meaning. You're not too old to learn different, I said gently. Your father learned to say no at 75. You can start now. I don't know if Jennifer... This isn't about Jennifer. This is about you. About what kind of person you want to be. What kind of life you want to live. He nodded slowly, wiping his eyes. Stay for lunch, I said. I made your father's beef stew recipe. We can sit on the porch, watch the ocean, and you can tell me about you. Not your job, not your houses, not your investments. You. I'd like that. He helped me finish planting the tomatoes. We didn't talk much, just worked side by side in the soil like Robert and I used to do. When we were done, I made us sandwiches and we sat on the porch with Captain between us, watching boats on the Atlantic. Michael didn't visit every week after that, or even every month, but when he did come, he came empty-handed, no questions about documents, no requests for money. Just him, sometimes bringing coffee, sometimes bringing flowers from his own garden that he'd started planting. In June, he came alone and told me he and Jennifer were separating. She'd met someone with more money, bigger ambitions. He seemed sad but also relieved. I think I became someone I didn't like, he said. Someone Dad wouldn't have been proud of. Your father always loved you, Michael, even when he was disappointed. Were you disappointed in me? I thought about it honestly. Yes, but I'm not anymore. You're learning. That's what matters. He stayed for dinner that night, and the next time he visited. And slowly, carefully, we started rebuilding something we'd lost. Not the parent-child relationship based on giving and taking, but something more equal, more honest. Michael started volunteering at the museum, giving tours of the philatelic wing, learning about stamps, about history, about why his father loved these tiny pieces of paper. He'd call me after each tour, excited about teaching a school group about Irish history through postage. I get it now, he said once. Why Dad did this. It's not about the money. It's about the stories. Yes. I'm sorry I didn't get it sooner. I'm sorry I didn't ask about the stories when he was alive to tell them. He knows, sweetheart. Wherever he is, he knows. I'm 70 now. My cottage garden is thriving tomatoes and petunias, and the roses Robert loved. Captain is getting gray around the muzzle. The museum's philatelic wing has school groups booked out for months. The scholarship fund has sent 12 young collectors to conferences and shows. Michael comes for Sunday dinner most weeks now. Sometimes he brings a woman named Rachel, a teacher who loves gardens and old books. She's nothing like Jennifer. She asks questions, listens to stories, laughs at my jokes. Michael looks lighter around her, happier. Last Sunday, he brought me something wrapped in tissue paper. I found this at an estate sale, he said. Thought of Dad. Inside was a small glassine envelope and 1,850 seconds Irish stamp, green and cream-colored, barely bigger than my thumbnail. Rare, probably valuable. Michael, you didn't have to. I didn't buy it as an investment. I bought it because it's beautiful. Because Dad would have loved it. Because... He shrugged, suddenly shy. Because I'm starting a collection. Not to sell. Just to have. To learn about. To love. I hugged him then, tears streaming down my face. Not sad tears. Happy ones. Your father would be so proud. You think so? I know so. I put the stamp in a frame on my mantel, next to our wedding photo and the picture of Robert in his garden. And every time I look at it, I remember what he wrote in his diary. You understand that value isn't just money, it's memory, history, beauty. Michael understands now too. And really, that's worth more than all the stamps in the world.